So the tariffs announced on basically the entire world, the entire world yesterday from the United States of America, that are supposed to be made to bring in more manufacturing jobs into the United States. The people that I know within the bike industry are saying that these tariffs will very likely decimate the entire industry before it's able to even bring any of those possible jobs into the United States. So we should probably talk about it. So first off, I am not speaking for any of our partners or sponsors or anything like that. All these thoughts and words are my own. This isn't meant to be a political video or a partisan video. This is just reporting what's happening and reporting what I'm hearing from people within the industry. So these tariffs are applied to materials or goods that are made or pulled out of the ground from outside the United States. And so when they cross over the border into the United States, the importer on the American side pays a certain percentage of whatever that good is worth, effectively making it more expensive for the people in the United States. And the numbers that the US administration announced are pretty wild. Like some of these countries, like Vietnam, for example, it shows a 46% tariff on all goods coming in from Vietnam, and 54% on China, and Taiwan is 32%, Thailand 36%, and on and on and on. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, I don't really buy anything that's like made in Vietnam. Well, if you happen to own any of the more premium carbon bikes out on the market, you probably do, as many of them, including this bike right here, are made in places like, well, Vietnam, for example, or these tires that are made in Thailand, or your drivetrain that's made in Taiwan or China. So on the bicycle industry side of things, it is wide-reaching, and it affects every single bike on the market, no matter what. But it is worth noting that the numbers that we saw in that announcement and on those stapled together sheets that were given out to reporters, some of those numbers don't necessarily make all that much sense, and they might just be more for show than anything else. We don't know yet. Like, for example, from Thailand, it showed on that piece of paper that the products crossing over to the United States will receive a 36% tariff, which is pretty massive, because supposedly Thailand puts a 72% tariff on American goods coming into Thailand. But from what I've seen from the authorities in Thailand, that's not the case. Their actual average tariff rate is only 9%. And therefore, technically, the tariffs coming into the US should only be 4.5%. But we'll see how all this shakes out. A lot of the numbers could just be bluster. Let's hope that's the case. But really, we have to take all of this at face value. So let's say there's an American bike company that designs and engineers their bikes in America and has the components manufactured overseas, or at least most of them. Pretty much every single component on that bike would be charged a tariff. So this frame right here, once it crosses over the border into America, could all of a sudden be 46% more expensive. Now, I don't know if that's actually gonna happen, and I'm just using this bike behind me as an example, but theoretically, that's what we could be looking at. And on the tires, it could be 36% more. On the drivetrain, it could be between 32 and 54% more. And remember, they're saying that these tariffs are supposed to take effect immediately, with essentially zero time for any of the manufacturers to respond, which is a very, very key point. Because again, the point of these tariffs is to try to bring manufacturing to the United States and have more manufacturing jobs, which there is, of course, nothing inherently wrong with that. But from the people that I've talked to in the industry, the problem lies in the immediacy of the tariffs. And many companies, including IBIS here, have worked really hard to try and bring manufacturing of carbon bikes and products to the United States. But doing so takes massive amounts of time and effort and resources to make that happen. It takes years and years to put in place and costs a lot of money. And if bike companies want to further that, they need funds. And you get funds from lenders. And the only way to get funds from a lender is if you can show them that the future is looking bright, that the industry is looking strong, and consumer confidence is there. But in the situation we're in, by having these massive tariffs imposed immediately, the people that I'm speaking to from American companies, they're essentially having their legs kicked out from underneath of them financially, making it impossible to be able to secure funding and have any kind of a timeline, financially and otherwise, to actually build these factories and bring in more jobs and manufacturing to America. They don't have enough time to bring the manufacturing to America before the current financial and trading climate shuts them down forever. And as we all know, post-COVID, the bike industry is just not looking great. There's just an oversupply of parts and frames and components already built and just sitting in warehouses at the moment. So most bike companies or bike component companies are selling bikes with almost zero markup. Like, they're selling them close to cost just to keep themselves above water. Because at the moment, most consumers just aren't willing to spend more with where the economy's at already. And with these tariffs applied, if everything gets 30 to 50% more expensive, there's no leeway there for these companies to be able to try and absorb some of that cost, even for a short-term amount of time. So most companies are really stuck at the moment, because if bike companies or bike component companies decide to absorb some of the costs, many of them will be selling their products for less than what it would cost them to get them to America's shores. And it gets even more trickier when all these bike components are made from all over the world and they all get shipped to the United States. They all see all sorts of tariffs slapped onto them in each and every component. And this is the case for many bike companies. The bikes are assembled in the United States and then shipped off from there into markets like where I live in Canada. And because other companies are trying to protect their own interests, they're putting on counter tariffs or reciprocal tariffs. And so after a bike has already seen double-digit increase in prices just to get it assembled, then when it gets shipped to a place like Canada or somewhere else, there are more tariffs applied on top of that. Yeah. So make no mistake, these tariffs are applying to essentially every single thing that you use when you go on a mountain bike ride. From your action camera to your hip pack to the saddle to the chain, very most likely the frame, the suspension, the tires, the spokes, everything. These tariff policies have given businesses zero time and zero runway to actually make the changes that the US government wants to see. That's a problem. So if you are an American and you want to see more jobs in your country, especially in the manufacturing sector, and you want to see more bikes and bike parts made in America, that's great, it's totally fine. But if this is the case, I suggest talking to your representatives and urging them at the very least to give American businesses, all businesses really, some time to move things to the States before these forced market conditions shut down American companies and the jobs associated with them. Because that is obviously the opposite of what the US hopes to achieve here. So for me, personally, I'm pretty worried about the bike industry, about the world of biking. And if there's any advice that I could give right now, it's that if you were looking at purchasing a new bike or a frame or bike components or an action camera, whatever it might be, I would do that now. Like now. Because things are likely about to get a lot more expensive. What do you think about all this? Let me know down in the comments below. Please try and keep it civil. And please go and support the companies that you know and love right now, because they would sure appreciate it. All right, thank you for watching, and we will see you in about a week.